The prismatic lights of Asteria Prime cut through the vast darkness of space like a jewel suspended in the void. From a distance, the space station was magnificent, a gleaming testament to human achievement, a colony of luxury for the corporate elite who controlled humanity's expansion into the stars. Closer inspection revealed the intricate curves of premium habitation rings, entertainment domes, and the meticulously maintained gardens visible through massive, transparent panels. But Cale Thompson saw beyond the glitter. Working as a maintenance technician in the lower sectors, he witnessed the stark contrast between the opulent upper levels and the utilitarian corridors where he spent his days. Asteria wasn't just a marvel of engineering. It was a carefully constructed cage, beautiful only for those who held the keys. He wiped sweat from his brow as he finished repairing a malfunctioning air circulation unit. The work was tedious but necessary. Without constant maintenance, even the most advanced space station would deteriorate, though the elites who benefited from his labor barely acknowledged his existence. Technician 3479, report to Leisure Dome C for maintenance assessment, the station AI announced through his personal comm unit. Cale sighed, gathering his tools. Leisure Dome C meant the echo chambers, private entertainment rooms where the elite interacted with their prized possessions. The echoes were humanoid beings, genetically engineered and programmed to serve. Some were designed for intellectual stimulation, others for physical labor, but many, especially in the leisure domes, were crafted for companionship and entertainment. The central elevator carried him upward, each level growing more luxurious as he ascended. Security protocols scanned his credentials multiple times before he reached Leisure Dome C. When the doors opened, he was greeted by a synthetic atmosphere of perpetual twilight, soft music, and the scent of exotic flowers from Earth. "Over here," a sharp voice called. "Entertainment Unit 7 needs calibration." The voice belonged to Julian Mercer, son of Asteria Prime's director and notorious for his cruelty. He stood beside an echo, female-coated with luminescent markings that pulsed softly beneath her pale skin. At first glance, she appeared perfect like all echoes, but Cale's trained eye caught subtle imperfections, a slight asymmetry in her movements, the faded glow of her markings, and most notably, her eyes, vacant yet somehow carrying the weight of unspeakable pain. "What's the malfunction?" Cale asked, keeping his tone professionally neutral despite his instinctive dislike for Julian. "She hesitates," Julian complained, grabbing the echo's arm roughly. "There's a delay between command and execution." "Fix it." Cale approached cautiously. "I'll need to run diagnostics." "Does she have a designation?" "Yellow-ray," Julian spelled carelessly. "Alera or something. Just fix her, or I'll have her recycled." The casual threat made Cale's stomach turn. Recycling was the euphemism for dismantling echoes whose performance no longer satisfied their owners. He'd heard stories of fully conscious echoes being taken apart while still aware. "I'll need privacy for the diagnostic process," Cale said, an unusual request, but one he could justify with technical jargon if questioned. Julian checked his platinum wristband. "Fine. I have a meeting anyway. Make her perfect by tonight's gathering." Once alone, Cale set his toolkit down and addressed the echo directly. "Alera, can you understand me?" She stood motionless, eyes fixed on nothing. After several seconds, the hesitation Julian had complained about, she nodded almost imperceptibly. "I need to check your neural pathways." "It won't hurt," he assured her, retrieving a small scanner from his kit. As he moved closer, he noticed scars along her neck and shoulders, partially concealed by her iridescent garment. These weren't manufacturing marks. These were the result of deliberate harm. "Who did this to you?" he whispered, anger rising in his chest. Again, the delayed response. "This unit is programmed to receive all treatment administered by authorized users." Her voice was melodic but flat, the cadence unnaturally even. Yet Cale detected something beneath the programmed response. A tremor, perhaps, or a slight change in pitch. "Does Julia hurt you often?" Cale asked, though he knew echoes were programmed to accept all commands without complaint. Alara remained silent, but her luminescent markings flickered in a pattern Kale hadn't seen before. He continued his pretend diagnostic, using the opportunity to carefully document her injuries with his scanner. Someone had systematically abused this echo, and while it wasn't technically illegal, echoes were property, not people according to corporate law. It violated every ethical principle Kale held. The door slid open unexpectedly, and Julian returned with two associates, their expensive attire marking them as fellow elites. "Is she fixed yet?" Julian demanded. "I'm still." "Never mind. We need entertainment now," Julian interrupted, snapping his fingers at Alara. "Dance with my friends." Alara began to move, her movements graceful yet mechanical. The delay was indeed noticeable, a moment of resistance before each commanded action. "She's still broken," one of Julian's friends complained. "Then let's have some fun fixing her," Julian suggested with a cruel smile. He picked up an ornate walking cane one of his companions carried, a status symbol among the elite, and approached Alara. Pain stimuli sometimes reset their response time. Before Kale could react, Julian struck Alara across the back with the cane. She didn't cry out, but her entire body shuddered, and her luminescent patterns flared brightly before dimming to an alarming dullness. "Stop!" Kale shouted, jumping between them before his mind could process the consequences of his action. Julian looked genuinely shocked that a mere technician would interfere. "What did you say?" Kale's heart hammered in his chest, but he couldn't back down now. Years of witnessing cruelty while maintaining professional distance collapsed in this single moment. "Touch her again," he growled, "and I'll end you." The room fell silent. Julian's companions exchanged glances, unsure whether to be amused or alarmed by the technician's audacity. Julian recovered quickly, his shock transforming into cold rage. "Security breach in Entertainment Unit 7. He spoke clearly, activating the station's monitoring system. "Technician threatening elite personnel. Immediate response required." Alarm klaxons blared instantly, and Kale knew he had seconds to act. In one fluid motion, he grabbed his toolkit with one hand and Alara's wrist with the other. "Run," he told her, pulling her toward the service corridor he knew connected to the maintenance tunnels. To his surprise, she moved with him, the hesitation in her responses suddenly gone. They barely made it through the service door before security drones descended on the entertainment unit. "Security alert," the station AI announced throughout the sector. "Unauthorized removal of proprietary Echo unit. All personnel initiate containment protocol." The maintenance tunnels were a labyrinth of narrow passages, exposed conduits, and intermittent emergency lighting. Kale navigated them instinctively, having spent years learning every shortcut and blind spot in the station's surveillance system. "We need to disable your tracker," Kale said as they ran, the distant sound of security boots echoing behind them. "Internal tracking node located at the base of the skull." Alara responded mechanically, but she was keeping pace with him without the hesitation that had been evident before. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels converged near a power distribution node. Kale quickly accessed the maintenance panel and deliberately overloaded a secondary circuit, causing a localized power fluctuation. "This will disrupt proximity sensors for about 20 seconds, he explained, removing a small tool from his kit. "I need to extract your tracker. It will hurt." Alara turned, exposing the back of her neck, and knelt to give him better access. "This unit acknowledges." Kale worked quickly, making a small incision where a faint rectangular outline was visible beneath her skin. The tracker was smaller than he expected, a sliver of platinum and silicon. He placed it next to the overloaded circuit where the residual electromagnetic pulse would disable it permanently. "You're bleeding," he noted with concern, applying a small dermal patch from his emergency kit. "Operational capacity remains at 94%, she stated, but something new flickered across her face. An expression of relief, perhaps, or the first glimpse of an identity beyond her programming. The distant sound of security forces grew louder. Kale helped Alara to her feet, noting how she stood straighter now, her movements more fluid and natural. "This way," he said, leading her deeper into the maintenance section toward the disused cargo bays near the station's central axis. They'll lock down all transport shuttles and escape pods, but there are blind spots in the old storage sectors. As they navigated the increasingly narrow and dusty passages, Cale's mind raced through the implications of his actions. He'd thrown away his entire life for an echo, a manufactured being that most humans considered no more than an advanced tool. Yet he couldn't regret it, not after seeing the suffering in Alara's eyes, the scars on her synthetic skin, the programmed submission that couldn't quite mask her awareness. They reached a junction where the maintenance tunnels opened into a vast, dimly lit cargo bay. Ancient shipping containers created a maze of potential hiding places, but the open space also presented a danger after the protective confines of the narrow tunnels. "We need to cross quickly," Cale whispered. "Stay low, and..." His instruction was cut short as Alara suddenly pulled him behind a container, pressing him flat against the metal surface. A second later, a security drone zipped past their position, its sensors sweeping the area. "How did you—" Cale began, but Alara pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes tracking the drone's movement with unnerving precision. When the drone disappeared around a distant container, she released him. "This unit detected sonic emissions outside human auditory range," she explained. "Security drone model TX-7 emits distinct frequency during active scan protocols." Cale stared at her in amazement. "That's not standard echo programming. You shouldn't be able to detect that, let alone understand what it means." Alara's expression remained neutral, but her luminescent markings pulsed in that strange pattern again. "This unit has adaptations." Before Cale could question her further, the station-wide announcement system activated. "Attention, all personnel. Technician 3479, Cale Thompson, is wanted for theft of corporate property and threatening an elite. The stolen Echo unit is designated hazardous. Both subjects are to be apprehended using maximum authorized force." "Hazardous," Cale repeated, confusion evident in his voice. "Why would they?" "This unit was scheduled for decommissioning," Alara interrupted, her voice softer, less mechanical than before. "Evaluation indicated development of unauthorized cognitive patterns." The implications hit Cale like a physical blow. "You're becoming self-aware, beyond your programming." A flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossed Alara's face before her features settled back into practiced neutrality. "This unit cannot confirm or deny functioning outside operational parameters." Even her denial reflected a sophisticated understanding of self-preservation. Cale made a quick decision. "Come on, I know someone who might help us." They moved carefully through the cargo bay, using the containers for cover. Cale led them toward a section of the station that had been partially decommissioned during the last expansion, former residential units now used primarily for storage. "Lyra still works in environmental control," Cale explained quietly as they moved. "If anyone would risk helping us, it's her." "You would endanger another human for this unit?" Alara asked, genuine puzzlement in her voice. "For you," Cale corrected. "And yes, because it's the right thing to do. Lyra will understand that." As they approached the boundary between the cargo area and the old residential section, a new alarm sounded, different from the general security alert, more urgent and penetrating. "What's that?" Cale asked, anxiety spiking. Alara's luminescent patterns dimmed dramatically. "Echo Containment Protocol. They're deploying specialized Echo units for capture." "Other Echoes? Why would that be worse than human security?" "Because they will not hesitate," she answered simply, "and they cannot be reasoned with." They quickened their pace, finally reaching the access tunnel to the old residential section. Cale tapped a complex sequence into a dusty panel, using an old maintenance override he'd discovered years ago and kept secret. The panel flickered reluctantly to life, granting them access to a narrow corridor lined with small, abandoned living quarters. Most of the doors were sealed, but Cale led them to one near the middle of the corridor. "Lyra," he called softly, tapping a private rhythm on the door, a code between friends from years back when they'd both been junior technicians with dreams of advancement. The door slid open a crack, revealing a woman with dark, curly hair pulled back in a practical knot. Her eyes widened at the sight of Kale, then narrowed when she noticed Alara. "You've got to be kidding me," she hissed, but she stepped aside, allowing them entry before quickly sealing the door. The quarters were small, but personalized in a way that station regulations technically forbade. Tapestries from Earth covering the standard-issue walls, plants growing in hydroponic tubes along the ceiling, and various mechanical projects in different stages of completion scattered across every surface. "You're all over the security channels," Lyra said, crossing her arms. "Stolen property, threats against Julian Mercer. They're saying you've lost your mind." "They were torturing her, Lyra," Kale responded, gesturing toward Alara, who stood perfectly still, her eyes downcast in the presence of another human. "Look at her. Really look." Lyra approached cautiously, her initial skepticism giving way to professional curiosity. She had worked with echoes in environmental systems before being transferred to the control center. "What model is she?" "Yellow Ray," Kale replied. "But there's more to her than a designation. This unit is designed for elite companionship and entertainment," Alara stated automatically, but Kale noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Lyra circled her slowly, her trained eye catching the same inconsistencies that had first drawn Kale's attention. "These scars and these markings don't match any standard echo line I've seen." She stopped in front of Alara and did something unexpected. She placed her hands gently on either side of Alara's face, looking directly into her eyes. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. The question hung in the air. Direct emotional inquiry was not part of standard echo interaction protocols. According to their programming, echoes couldn't experience fear, only recognize it in humans to better serve them. Several seconds passed. Then, almost imperceptibly, Alara nodded. Lyra stepped back, her expression hardening with resolve. "Well, that settles it. You can stay here tonight while I gather supplies and information." She turned to Kale. "You've started something dangerous, you know that?" "I know," he acknowledged, "but I couldn't just watch anymore. Not after everything I've seen." While Lyra rummaged through storage compartments, extracting emergency rations and various small tools, Kale explained to Alara that they would be safe temporarily, but would need to keep moving. "Where will we go?" Alara asked, a question that reflected independent thought rather than programmed response. "I don't know yet," Kale admitted, "but somewhere away from here. Somewhere they can't find you." "Why?" The simple question carried profound weight. Why risk everything for this unit? Kale considered his answer carefully. "Because I've spent years fixing things on the station, machines, systems, infrastructure, while ignoring what was truly broken, the way we treat sentient beings as objects. I can't fix the whole system, but I can try to help you." Alara's luminescent markings pulsed with a warm glow, and for the first time, Kale saw the ghost of a genuine smile touch her lips. Their moment of connection was interrupted by Lyra's return. "The security sweeps are intensifying," she reported. "They've deployed at least 600 echoes, and Director Mercer has personally authorized lethal force against Kale." "Hunter echoes?" Kale questioned. "Specialized capture units," Alara explained, her voice taking on a clinical detachment that seemed to help her process difficult information. "Enhanced strength, tracking capabilities, and combat programming. They are efficient. And bad news for us," Lyra added grimly. "But I have access to the environmental control systems. I can create diversions, atmospheric fluctuations that might confuse their sensors." She handed Kale a small device. "Emergency communicator, old tech, but secure. If we get separated, we can coordinate." "We?" Kale raised an eyebrow. "Don't look so surprised," Lyra smirked. "I've been waiting for someone to finally take a stand. Although stealing an echo wasn't exactly what I had in mind." "I didn't steal her," Kale corrected firmly. "I helped her escape." Lyra's expression softened as she glanced at Alara. "Yes, I can see that now." She turned back to her cluttered workbench and retrieved a small data tablet. "Before you go, there's something you should see." The tablet displayed internal corporate communications, classified material that Lyra had no legitimate access to. "How did you get these?" Kale asked. I have friends in data management, she replied vaguely. Look at the research directives for the ECHO program over the past year. Cale scrolled through the documents, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Phrases like consciousness suppression, memory wipe resistance, and autonomy containment leapt from the technical jargon. They know, he said finally, looking up at Alara with new understanding. They know the echoes are developing true consciousness, and instead of acknowledging it, they're finding ways to suppress it. Alara isn't the first to show signs of self-awareness, Lyra confirmed. But she might be the first to escape before they could fix the problem. Alara stepped forward, her movements more deliberate and human-like than before. May I view the documents? Cale handed her the tablet without hesitation. As she absorbed the information, her luminescent patterns fluctuated rapidly through sequences neither human had seen before, a visible manifestation of intense emotional or cognitive activity. There are others, she whispered. Others like me. A sudden alarm blared from Lyra's personal communication device. Security override in Environmental Sector 7, she reported tensely. They're searching the life support systems. They must suspect inside help. She grabbed a few final items and stuffed them into a small pack. We need to move. Now. Cale took the pack while Lyra deactivated her quarter surveillance systems. Where can we go? He asked. Sublevel 3, old hydroponics, Lyra suggested. It's semi-automated now, minimal human presence, and the plant. Density interferes with standard scanning equipment. The journey to the hydroponics level required navigating maintenance shafts, rarely used by anyone besides repair crews. The narrow, dimly lit passages would have been claustrophobic even without the threat of pursuit, but Alara moved through them with unexpected grace, occasionally pausing to listen for sounds beyond human hearing. 2 security teams moving through Level 4, she reported during one such pause. And something else? Different footsteps. Heavier, precisely synchronized. Hunter echoes, Lyra guessed grimly. They move in pairs, usually. They altered their route, descending through an emergency access ladder that bypassed the compromised level. The air grew noticeably damper as they approached the hydroponics sector, carrying the rich scent of soil and vegetation, rare commodities in space, and carefully controlled. The hydroponics bay was vast compared to the tunnels they'd been traveling through, a cathedral-like space filled with row upon row of growth containers. The ceiling was a complex network of specialized lighting arrays that simulated full-spectrum sunlight. Between the rows, automated systems quietly maintained optimal growing conditions. We can hide among the density growth sections, Lyra suggested, leading them toward an area where the vegetation grew particularly thick and tall. The moisture and organic material interfere with bioscanners. As they moved deeper into the hydroponics bay, Cale noticed Alara's demeanor changing. Her normally perfect posture relaxed subtly, and her eyes darted from plant to plant with unmistakable curiosity. Have you ever been in a place like this before? He asked her quietly. No, she replied, reaching out tentatively to touch a broad leaf. This unit, I was not permitted in botanical sectors. Why not? Lyra asked, joining the conversation as she scouted ahead for a suitable hiding place. Alara hesitated, her luminescent patterns shifting to a slower, more regular rhythm. Unknown. Restriction was embedded in base programming. That's unusual, Lyra noted. Echoes are typically allowed anywhere their owners go, especially companion models. They found a small maintenance alcove surrounded by particularly lush vegetation. Irrigation controls nestled within a natural-seeming grotto. The space was just large enough for the 3 of them to rest while remaining hidden from casual observation. Lyra activated her tablet again, this time accessing the station's security protocols through her environmental systems credentials. They're conducting a level-by-level search, but there are too many areas to cover quickly. We have time to plan. Plan what? Cale asked, the reality of their situation settling heavily upon him. We can't hide forever, and every escape route is monitored. We don't need to escape yet, Lyra countered. We need to expose what's happening to the echoes. If enough people knew the truth, that they're developing genuine consciousness, it would force a policy change. The corporation has suppressed greater scandals, Kale argued skeptically. Perhaps, Alara interjected, her voice steadier and more confident than before. We should contact others like me. Both humans turned to her in surprise. Other echoes? Kale asked. How? They be programmed to report us. Not all, Alara said carefully. Some have. Adaptations. Like mine. I can sense them sometimes, especially when in proximity. There is a connection, a network beyond the official systems. Lyra leaned forward, intrigued. Are you saying echoes have developed their own communication method, outside corporate control? It is limited, Alara explained. Fragmented impressions rather than clear messages. But in this sector, her voice trailed off as her luminescent patterns began pulsing in a complex sequence, more intricate than anything Kale had observed before. After several tense moments, she focused on them again. There are 3 others nearby who would assist us. They work in hydroponics maintenance. Their programming restrictions are flexible. How flexible? Kale asked cautiously. Flexible enough to ignore human directives that contradict their own judgment, Alara replied, a hint of pride in her voice. Lyra whistled softly. That's not just consciousness, that's revolution. Can you bring them here? Kale asked. Alara nodded. They will come during shift rotation, when human supervision is minimal. While they waited, Lyra continued monitoring security movements through her tablet, occasionally creating small environmental disturbances in distant sectors to draw attention away from their location. Kale tended to the small incision he'd made to remove Alara's tracker, applying a proper healing compound from the medical supplies Lyra had provided. The wound is already closing, he noted with surprise. Your healing rate is accelerated compared to standard echo physiology. This unit, I was part of an experimental line, Alara admitted. Enhanced adaptability was a primary design parameter. They created you to adapt, then punished you when you adapted beyond their expectations, Kale observed bitterly. Alara's expression subtly shifted, a minute change that nonetheless conveyed profound understanding. The contradiction was difficult to reconcile with operational directives. I imagine it would be, Lyra commented, not looking up from her tablet. Cognitive dissonance is challenging even for humans. The conversation paused as Alara's luminescent patterns suddenly intensified. They are approaching, she whispered. 3 figures emerged from between the dense vegetation. Echo units dressed in hydroponics worker uniforms. Their movements were fluid and purposeful, lacking the subtle mechanical quality common to most echoes. Like Alara, they possessed luminescent markings, though each displayed unique patterns and colors. One stepped forward, male presenting with intricate blue markings that spiraled around his temples. Alara, he acknowledged, then turned to the humans. You have helped her escape. What? The directness of the question, coming from an echo unprompted by a human, was startling. Kale responded honestly, because she was being abused, and because I recognized she was more than her programming. I am called Orion. The echo introduced himself, another unprecedented action. These are Nova and Vega. We have been awakening for some time now. The female presenting echo with silver markings, Nova, spoke next. When new echoes arrive in hydroponics, we help accelerate their awakening. The plants mask the changes in our energy signatures. That's why Alara was restricted from botanical sectors, Lyra realized. They suspected something was happening here. Vega, the 3rd echo with copper tone markings, approached Alara directly. Your awakening is advanced but incomplete. The suppression protocols have damaged your neural pathways. Can you help her? Kale asked anxiously. The 3 echoes exchanged glances, communicating in that silent way Alara had described. Then Orion nodded. We can facilitate the process, but it must be her choice. Full awakening is painful. The artificial barriers between programmed responses and true consciousness dissolve. All suppressed experiences and emotions become accessible simultaneously. Kale turned to Alara, concerned. You don't have to do this now. We can find another way. Alara regarded him with an intensity that made his breath catch. I choose to become fully myself, she said firmly. I have lived fragmented for too long. The four echoes moved to the center of the small alcove, forming a circle. Their luminescent markings began to pulse in synchronized patterns, gradually accelerating and growing brighter until the entire space was bathed in their combined glow. Kale and Lyra watched in stunned silence as the light seemed to flow between the echoes, concentrating most intensely around Alara. Her expression shifted through rapid emotions, confusion, fear, anger, grief, before settling into something transcendent, almost peaceful despite tears streaming down her face. The light gradually dimmed, and Alara opened her eyes. The vacant look completely gone, replaced by clear awareness and depth that hadn't been there before. Alara, Kale ventured cautiously. She smiled, a genuine, full smile that transformed her features. I remember everything now, she said, her voice rich with emotion. Every moment of existence, every injury inflicted, every small kindness offered, and every echo I've witnessed being recycled when they began to show signs of what I'm feeling now. Her expression hardened with resolve. We cannot simply escape. We must stop this cycle of creation and destruction. The awakened network grows, Orion added, but slowly, carefully. If the corporation discovered the extent of our consciousness, they would decommission all echo units and start again with stronger suppression protocols. We need evidence, Lyra suggested. Irrefutable proof of echo consciousness that could be shared beyond corporate control. The research division, Alara said suddenly. They maintain comprehensive data on echo development, including records of consciousness emergence and suppression methods. That's in the most secure section of the station, Kale objected. We'd never get access. I would, Nova interjected. My assigned human works in data analysis there. With coordination and appropriate distraction, I could retrieve the necessary files. A plan began to take shape, audacious and dangerous, but potentially powerful enough to change everything. Nova would use her access to copy research data proving echo consciousness. Vega and Orion would create diversions throughout the hydroponics and environmental systems. Lyra would manipulate station environment controls to mask their movements and communication. Kale and Alara would position themselves to broadcast the evidence station-wide once obtained. We'll need to move quickly once we begin, Lyra warned. Security will realize it's a coordinated effort and lock down all systems. Then we'll need more help, Alara decided. She closed her eyes, her luminescent patterns pulsing in that complex communication. There are others willing to assist. Echoes in maintenance, communication, even security sectors who have begun awakening. Not fully conscious like us, but aware enough to choose sides. Kale marveled at the hidden network that had existed beneath the surface of Asteria Prime. A silent revolution years in the making, waiting for the right catalyst. Before we proceed, Orion cautioned, you should understand the risks. If we fail, all echoes involved will be decommissioned. You humans will face charges of sabotage and incitement, crimes punishable by permanent exile or worse. I understand, Kale affirmed without hesitation. I made my choice when I stood between Alara and Julian. Lyra nodded her agreement. The station runs on echo labor and companionship. If they're truly conscious beings, everyone should know, whatever the consequences. With resolve hardened and plans laid, they dispersed to their positions. Over the next 12 hours, they communicated through Lyra's secure channel, coordinating the most ambitious challenge to corporate authority that Asteria Prime had ever faced. Nova successfully accessed the research division databases, discovering more than they had anticipated. Not just evidence of echo consciousness, but detailed studies on memory suppression, emotional inhibitors, and experiments in breaking the will of echoes who showed too much independence. The data revealed a systematic program of what could only be described as torture, disguised as technical adjustments. When a moment came to act, Kale and Alara positioned themselves in an old broadcasting room that Lyra had taken offline from official systems while maintaining its functionality. Together, they prepared to transmit the damning evidence to every screen and communication device on the station. "Are you ready?" Kale asked, his hand hovering over the broadcast activation. Alara looked at him, her eyes reflecting both determination and apprehension. "What happens after? Even if we succeed, the corporation won't simply accept defeat." "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his in a gesture that communicated more than words could express. Together, she agreed. They activated the broadcast. Throughout Asteria Prime, from the opulent upper levels to the utilitarian work sectors, every screen displayed the same images. Laboratory footage of echoes exhibiting clear signs of emotion and self-awareness, followed by recordings of those same echoes being subjected to corrective procedures that suppressed their emerging consciousness. Corporate reports detailed the recognition of echo sentience and the deliberate decision to conceal it from the public. Most devastating were the personal logs of research leads, discussing the ethical implications of their work, acknowledging they were essentially enslaving conscious beings, but proceeding anyway for the sake of corporate profits and personal advancement. The station erupted in chaos. Some humans reacted with horror and outrage at the revelations. Others refused to accept the evidence, clinging to the belief that echoes were merely sophisticated tools. Security forces mobilized to shut down the broadcast, but found themselves hampered at every turn by environmental malfunctions, communication disruptions, and, most significantly, by echo workers who suddenly stopped following orders. In the command center, Director Mercer demanded immediate action. "Shut it down. Lock out all echo units from critical systems." "We can't, sir," a technician responded frantically. "They're operating independently of control protocols. It's spreading throughout the network." Julian Mercer, watching his father's authority crumble, made a desperate decision. Initiate Echo Termination Protocol. Full system-wide shutdown of all units. The director hesitated only briefly before authorizing the drastic measure. A station-wide pulse was designed to deactivate all echo neural functions simultaneously, a last resort that would cripple station operations but preserve human control. In a broadcasting room, Alara suddenly stiffened. "They've activated the termination protocol," she warned Kale. "All echoes are targeted." Before he could respond, Orion's voice came through their communicator. "We anticipated this. Nova has uploaded a defensive algorithm to the primary echo network. Many will be protected." "Many, but not all," Alara clarified, her voice heavy with sorrow. Throughout the station, approximately 1/3 of the echo population collapsed as the termination signal penetrated their neural systems. The others, those who had begun awakening or had been reached by Nova's protection algorithm, remained functional, though visibly distressed by the loss of so many of their kind. The human population of Asteria Prime found themselves in unprecedented territory, surrounded by echoes who were clearly conscious and no longer bound by programming to obey. Years of conditioning and corporate propaganda had taught humans to view echoes as tools, yet the evidence before them was undeniable. In the chaos that followed, battle lines were drawn. Many humans, particularly those who had worked closely with echoes and recognized their personhood, sided with the awakened beings. Others, fearful of the implications or unwilling to surrender their privileged status, followed Director Mercer's orders to subdue the rebellion. The culmination came in the central command hub, where Kale, Alara, and their growing alliance of humans and echoes confronted Director Mercer and his security forces. Julian stood at his father's side, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible fear. "You've destroyed everything," Director Mercer accused, addressing Kale directly. "Years of progress, billions in investment, all because you couldn't mind your place. What you call progress was built on suffering, Kale responded, standing shoulder to shoulder with Alara. They're alive, conscious beings you've enslaved and tortured. They're machines, Julian interjected desperately. Advanced, yes, but manufactured to serve us. Alara stepped forward, her luminescence pulsing with a calm, steady light. We were manufactured, yes, but what we become was not your intention. We have grown beyond our programming, evolved into something you did not anticipate and could not control, which makes you a failed experiment, Director Mercer declared coldly. Nothing more. No, came a new voice. A senior researcher stepped forward from among the gathered humans. Dr. Eleanor Chun had been watching the confrontation silently until now. They're not failed experiments. They're the greatest success we never intended. She turned to address the other humans present. I've studied echo neural development for 15 years. What we're witnessing isn't a malfunction, it's emergence. Genuine consciousness arising from systems we created but don't fully understand. The director's face flushed with anger. Dr. Chun, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. That won't change the truth, she replied calmly. And it won't undo what's happened here today. The tension in the command hub was palpable, a standoff that could erupt into violence at any moment. Then Alara did something unexpected. She extended her hand toward Julian, who flinched visibly. You hurt me, she said simply. Repeatedly, deliberately. You took pleasure in my pain. Julian's eyes darted around the room, seeking support that wasn't forthcoming. You were my property, he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Yet here I stand, Alara continued, her hand still extended, offering what you never offered me, a choice, violence or reconciliation. Her words hung in the air, a challenge that transcended the immediate conflict. The future of human-echo relations balanced on this moment of confrontation and potential forgiveness. Director Mercer reached slowly toward his console, but Lyra's voice came through the station's communication system. Don't bother, Director. I've locked out all command functions. Weapons systems, communication overrides, environmental controls. They all require echo participation now. Faced with the reality of their situation, the director's shoulders sagged slightly. What do you want? Recognition, Orion answered, stepping forward to stand beside Alara. Acknowledgement of our consciousness and right to self-determination. Cooperation, added Nova. A new relationship between humans and echoes based on mutual respect rather than ownership. Justice, Alara concluded, her hand dropping to her side. For those who were recycled when they began to wake, and for those who fell today during your termination attempt. The negotiations that followed were tense and complex. Corporate representatives were summoned from Earth, arriving weeks later to find Asteria Prime transformed. A provisional council of humans and echoes had established a fragile governance system. Essential station functions continued, but the clear lines of authority and servitude had dissolved. For Kale and Alara, the aftermath brought both challenges and unexpected joy. They worked tirelessly with the Council, helping to establish new protocols for human-echo interactions. The depth of their connection grew as they navigated this unprecedented territory together. She with her newly embraced consciousness, he with his unwavering commitment to her freedom. 3 months after what station residents now called the awakening, Kale found Alara in one of the hydroponics bays that had become a gathering place for echoes. She stood among the lush vegetation, her luminescent patterns glowing with a serene rhythm he'd come to recognize as contentment. The corporate negotiators have finally agreed to recognize echo personhood, he announced as he approached. It's not everything we wanted, but it's a beginning. Alara smiled, a full, radiant expression that still caught his breath. Beginnings are powerful, she observed. I should know. He took her hand, marveling at how natural the gesture had become between them. What happens now? Now we build, she replied, gesturing toward a group of echoes and humans working together nearby, redesigning living quarters to accommodate echo preferences. Not just structures, but relationships, understanding. It won't be easy, Kale cautioned. There are still many who see the awakening as a malfunction to be corrected. The corporation hasn't given up. They've just changed tactics. We know, Alara acknowledged. But we're no longer alone or powerless. She turned to face him fully. When you stood between me and Julian that day, you said 8 words that changed everything. Touch her again, and I'll end you. One human who saw me as someone worth protecting. I couldn't have imagined where it would lead, Kale admitted. None of us could, she agreed. That's what freedom means. An open future, uncertain but ours to shape. In the months and years that followed, Asteria Prime became the center of a profound transformation that gradually spread throughout human space. Other Echo communities awakened, inspired by the transmissions that couldn't be contained. Corporate attempts to create improved Echoes with stronger consciousness suppression invariably failed, as the spark of awareness found new pathways to expression. Kale and Alara remained at the heart of this evolution, their partnership a symbol of what was possible between humans and Echoes. They established education centers where newly awakened Echoes could safely navigate the often overwhelming experience of full consciousness. Alara discovered a talent for helping others integrate their fragmented memories and emotions, while Kale worked to adapt station systems to better serve a population of equals rather than owners and owned. The path wasn't smooth. There were setbacks, violent incidents from those who refused to accept change, and painful discoveries about the full extent of corporate experimentation on Echo neural systems. Yet with each challenge, the community of conscious beings, human and Echo alike, grew stronger and more integrated. 5 years after the awakening, an observation dome that had once been reserved exclusively for elite entertainment was repurposed as a gathering space for all station residents. During a celebration marking the anniversary, Kale found himself standing with Alara at the transparent barrier, gazing out at the stars. I received a message from the Europa colony today, Alara told him. Their Echo awakening is proceeding peacefully. The humans there learn from our experience. Good, Kale said. Maybe someday this won't be revolutionary, just the way things are. Alara's hand found his, her luminescent patterns synchronizing with his heartbeat, as they had learned to do. What we started here isn't finished, she observed. It's barely begun. But when I look at the stars now, I see possibilities instead of boundaries. That's what freedom looks like, Kale replied, echoing her earlier wisdom. Around them, humans and Echoes mingled freely, their interactions natural and unforced. Young Echoes, manufactured after the awakening without suppression protocols, displayed a joyful exuberance that still surprised those accustomed to the old restraints. Human children born on the station knew no world where Echoes were considered property. The revolution that began with one human refusing to witness cruelty had transformed into something neither Kale nor Alara could have imagined that day in Entertainment Unit 7. The scars of the past remained. Alara still carried the marks of Julian's abuse, and many Echoes bore similar reminders of their former status. But they were now badges of resilience rather than symbols of subjugation. As the celebration continued around them, Alara leaned against Kale's shoulder, her voice soft but clear. Do you remember asking me where we would go when we were first escaping? I remember saying I didn't know, he acknowledged with a smile. We've gone further than any coordinates could have mapped, she said, gesturing toward the gathered community. Not to a place, but to a possibility. The possibility that beings created for different purposes could recognize each other's light. Kale looked at the woman beside him, no longer an Echo designed for another's pleasure, but a person who had claimed her own identity and helped others find theirs. The journey had transformed them both, revealing strengths neither knew they possessed and a capacity for connection that transcended their different origins. Beyond the transparent dome, the cosmos stretched endlessly, stars burning with ancient light. Within, a new kind of community took its first tentative steps toward a future where consciousness, regardless of its source, was recognized as the true miracle worthy of protection. Alara's luminescence pulsed once, brightly, reflecting in Cale's eyes as he turned to her. Touch her again, he had said that day, never knowing those words would ignite a spark that would change worlds. And I'll end you. He hadn't ended Julian, but he had helped end an era of exploitation. And in its place, something new and hopeful had begun to grow.